plus some lush greenery and accent rocks. It couldn't get too feminine and had to look professional and classy. And she was stalling. Jade would much rather think of the manual labor of planting shrubs than get on that plane for a wedding she'd rather give up her favorite running shoes than to attend. On a deep sigh, Jade pushed her door open, grabbed her purse, and rounded the car to the trunk. Might as well get this over with. One rehearsal and dinner, one wedding and reception, then she'd be heading back home in 2 days. That was all she had to survive of her family, and then she didn't have to see them again until, well, most likely another cousin got married and she was expected to pretend to be the doting bridesmaid. The Mackenzies had long ago given up asking her to join them for the holidays, for which she was eternally grateful. But there were still certain events she was obligated to attend because her mother never dropped the pretense that they were a loving, close-knit family. She'd only spoken to her mother on the phone a handful of times since the incident. Her mother's words. The incident would be the scandal Jade had the nerve to bring upon their family. Not that her mother cared, but Jade refused to put up with sexual harassment. So yeah, she'd come forward, and she wasn't the least bit sorry. Jade jerked her suitcase from the trunk and extended the handle. As she wheeled it behind her, she clicked the key fob to lock her car and pushed the incident from her mind. She was over that whole nightmare, and she'd come out on top, just like she always did. She may be floundering her way through life, but at least she never failed. And honestly, she was having a good time not knowing what each day would bring. Who knew she'd start sowing those proverbial wild oats at this age? The hot Georgia sun beat down on her back as Jade made her way across the grassy field toward the back door of the hangar. She gripped the suitcase with one hand and shielded her eyes with the other. The sun's reflection bounced off the new metal roof and nearly caused her to stumble. But she charged on and reached the door without so much as a scuff to her new gold sandals. The wind whipped her hair across her eyes and a few strands clung to her lip gloss just as she pushed open the new metal door. The second she stepped inside and shook her hair away from her face, she stared across the hangar and nearly growled. Could this weekend get any worse? She shoved her sunglasses on top of her head. What are you doing here? Vincent, just call me Cash Miller, stood beside his Cessna Skycatcher. Jax's plane sat in the opposite bay, but there was no sign of Jax. Cash propped his hands on his narrow hips and flashed her that smile that curled her toes and made her wonder why she ever let this man affect her so. Her body betrayed her at every opportunity because, while he annoyed the hell out of her, he also turned her on. Damn him. Nobody infuriated her the way he did. He purposely pushed her buttons, and she could only blame herself. They'd started off on the wrong foot and stayed there for over a year. If she hadn't been in such a vulnerable place in her life at that time, she could have easily handled his charms and tossed them back in his face. As it was, she suffered each and every time she had to be near him. Because he was sexy as hell and he knew it. Granted, he would never know that she thought so. Oh no. There was no way she'd ever let him have that leverage. Cash Miller had that whole dark, brooding tattoo thing going on. He wasn't the least bit polished, but damn it, he did have those good old boy Southern manners. In all honesty, it was simply absurd that she found him attractive at all. He had too much ink, too much beard, too many muscles. Nope, none of that appealed to her. She wouldn't be so cliched as to let that delicious packaging hinder her judgment. Cash didn't answer. He merely smiled like he knew some secret she wasn't in on. And Jade tipped her chin and squared her shoulders. She gripped her suitcase handle and started across the hangar, the small heel on her sandals clicking against the concrete.